needed to evacuate her. When the contractions come and she begins to shout, I feel the pains in my head. Got married a few years ago, and as young as we were, and with the excitement of not having sex before marriage, we jumped into the sex and love-making thing immediately. As God will have it, my wife conceived almost immediately, because I noticed about 2 or 3 weeks after, she was already having the usual morning sickness and all that. But as naive as we were still having the sex vigorously. And along the line, she lost the pregnancy. Now, how did that happen? Aside from the fact that we're having sex vigorously, nobody told us that once you've taken in, that the tempo of sex should reduce. If it must happen at all, it must be easy does it. We didn't know. I mean, we had waited several years of courtship, and now that we had a chance to do it, they are telling us we can't do it how we want it. So we didn't know that. So that happened, and we realized that 2 months into the pregnancy, she had gone out that day, and now that Okada has been banned in Lagos, she actually took a bike, and the guy actually was rough. The road was rough, so the guy was just going rough on the road and all that. I guess that affected her. So with the pain she was feeling, she decided not to take a bike back home and decided to do a walk. I think she did about 2 to 3 kilometers of walk back home. And that day she was completely stressed out. And she started feeling pains earlier. When I got home from work, I saw her, said she wasn't feeling well and all that. So I took her to the hospital we were using. And on getting there, she met a female doctor. That was the annoying part of it. She met a female doctor, and the doctor examined her and noticed that she was spotting. And instead of her to, I don't know, she just decided she was going to treat her for a toilet infection, knowing fully well that she was pregnant. And she gave her a drug to insert. I mean, the females would know this. She gave her a drug to insert, and we went home. Unfortunately for us that night, I thought my wife was having a baby. She woke me up in the middle of the night saying her tummy was paining her, and she didn't know what was happening. The next thing, I tried to calm her down, tried to put her to sleep. At a point, I went to sleep, and the next thing, I started hearing grunts from the restroom. And when I got there, I saw my wife pooing blood. It was just the two of us at home. I didn't know what to do. I panicked, and I just kept praying that God should just see her through till morning. Because, I mean, in the area where I lived, all the gates were locked. There was no way you could get out at that time. And we had to go through that for about 4 hours. This whole thing started about 1:30-ish in the night. And it went all through till 5:30 a.m. And she kept on discharging this thing. I didn't know what it was. I mean, but we just saw a doctor when, and so by early in the morning, 5:30 a.m., put her in the car and rushed her to the hospital. On getting to the hospital, the doctor attended to her maybe at about 2 hours later. They gave her a bed, I had to go to work. So as soon as they gave her a bed, I called my mom. My mom came down that morning. So as soon as she came, I had to leave to go to the office to tell them what had happened and all. When I came back later, the doctor now told me they needed to evacuate her, that the baby was not viable. I said, no, it's not possible, that they should leave it. That's why. I mean, as a strong Christian boy now, feeling that you can fit everything, I felt, no, that's my first child. Knowing fully well that a few months down the line, I just lost my dad. So the mindset was, no, it's my dad and he's coming back. So we kept faith and felt that, no, that the baby will be revived. But fortunately or unfortunately, one of the days she was in the hospital, I think the second day or the third day, she went to ease herself in the toilet, and what they wanted to evacuate from her just dropped in the toilet and all that. So that was how we lost that baby. And I told myself I was never going to go back to the hospital again. But then I was confused. How could a girl that was okay a while ago goes to the hospital to complain of body aches and all that, end up losing a pregnancy? So I told myself, if we're going to have another baby, one, it won't be in that hospital, and two, it will be with someone I trust and someone I have some level of confidence in. And that was what we did. Immediately after she was discharged from the hospital, we went to the hospital of a friend, more or less. Someone had had a business relationship with over time with my job at the bank. So I went to her and I told her the story. And she said they needed to clean her up and reevaluate her and watch her for a few months before we can try again. So she did that. She cleaned her up. While she was even cleaning her, she made us understand that the other hospital did a crappy job, infected her and all that. So they had to treat the two of us for likely infections and all. So then the journey for the real baby started. After a few months, after taking her back and forth for tests and all that, all this while, all that was going through my mind was that in all of this, the baby must come and must stay. But you see, I haven't lost the first one, though we didn't have to wait for too long. But to a large extent, I could appreciate what people who are waiting on the Lord for their own child go through. Because then I had flashes of things going through my mind, asking me, will I ever have a child? Will she ever be able to carry a child to term and all that? But as God will have it, we didn't have to wait too long and she conceived. Now for the journey for this real baby was not too rough because of the first experience. So the idea was for her to be on, not totally bed rest, but to be very calm with her activities and all that, not to stress herself and all. So she had to stay at home most of the time and all that. When we were about a few months to having the baby, the doctor informed us that she might not be able to give birth naturally, that if for any reason the baby becomes too big for her cervix, that she might have to be operated upon. So we had that challenge of her not eating too much towards the end of uh, the pregnancy, because I understand that the last few weeks of pregnancy, whatever you eat at that time goes straight to the baby, and the baby begins to add weight and all that. So we're always watching what we eat and all that. But even at that, when we got to the hospital, on the morning her water broke, they had given us a likely date. And in fact, the date they gave us was, I think we're a week behind the date they gave us. So personally, I'd been expecting that the baby was going to come at a particular time. And I had zeroed my mind that if they gave us, let's assume they gave us the 1st, for instance, I told myself, max, by the 8th, this baby will come. So on the morning of the day the baby wanted to come, I was getting dressed to go to work, and while we were doing the normal lovey-dovey of husband and wife, she told me her water broke. And I needed to take her to the hospital. So I said, okay, let me just get to the office, sign in, and come back and pick you. So I got to the office, signed in, and told my colleagues at the office that it seems it's going to happen very soon, so you guys should be praying for me. So I took her to the hospital. When we got there, the doctor told us that yes, but it wasn't, that the contraction wasn't so much, so we still have some time to play with. So in order to keep me calm, the doctor asked me to go back to work, that there's nothing, that I should come back in the evening, you know. But while I was in the office, I was not settled. I mean, with the last experience, I kept calling every now and then. At a point, they had to take the phone away from her and give it to the nurse. So I started calling the nurse, "Hey, how far?" He said, "No, there's no problem. I should calm down. You know, but at a point in the office, everybody knew that I was not myself. I happened to be a business development person, a marketer, and I couldn't go out that day. They just left me on my desk there, attending to working customers and all. But at a point around 3, when I couldn't handle it anymore, I just left the office and went to sit with her in the hospital. And I could see her going through a lot of pains. You know, when the contractions come and she begins to shout, I feel the pains in my head. You know, and that went on for so long. Now, the doctor knew that she wouldn't be able to deliver herself. But because my wife, she happens to be a very stubborn person, because my wife wanted to do it naturally, she insisted that she was going to try. So she left her to try. And the contractions went on and on and on. In the course of all the contraction and all that, I think they said the baby is supposed to dilate and come to a particular distance or something before you can actually go into pushing the baby out and all that. And the doctor noticed that that was not happening. So having gone through all that labor pain, at about 2 a.m., the doctor called me and said that she had called the surgeon and that by 5 a.m., the surgeon would be around and they were going to cut her up and bring out the baby. So my wife was going to go under the knife. I didn't tell my wife because I knew she would freak out. I stylishly left her there, went out into the lobby and said a silent prayer. I just said, God should just take control. And I came back into the room and I told her, CSO. So just put yourself in the frame of mind and everything will be okay. I assured her. I mean, while I was giving her all those assurances, I was battling with my own fears. But I knew that I couldn't, I wasn't supposed to show my fear so that she won't be affected. She needed encouragement. So I was giving her the encouragement, but deep down inside. So at about 4 a.m. or so, just before the doctor came, I put a call across to my mom and I told her that we're going under the knife. And she said I shouldn't worry, that everything is going to be fine. That gave me some bit of confidence. At about 5 a.m. when the surgeon came, they took her in. I offered to be in the operating room, but the doctor refused and said no, that I should stay outside. Obviously, maybe he felt I probably won't be able to handle it or something. And in the 1 hour that the surgery took place, I was just standing by the door. And I could hear everything that was going on in the operating room. I could hear my wife talking, just blabbing, talking incohesively. And 1 hour after, my beautiful daughter arrived. All the anxiety, all the fears, all the emotions, just all the pains, just disappeared. Looking at her face brought a new lease of life to me. And the next thing was now to handle my wife, who had been, drugged because of the operation. She had slept off. The next step was now to handle her after the operation. Now, the CS, after the CS, usually some people say that the safest way to have a child is through the CS. And I think I kind of agree. If you know what you're doing, just cut it, bring the baby out, sew it up, But the healing process takes a while. I think that's why they usually advise mothers to wait a few years before they try again, especially having gone through the cesarean section. It took my wife 1.5 years for our wounds to completely heal. It took a toll on me too, because the basic activities that we usually do, we couldn't do anymore. She needed to be very careful with her tummy. She couldn't bend. She couldn't carry anything heavy and all that. If she does anything intense, she begins to feel pain. She starts to bleed in her tummy and all that. So it took her about 1.5 years to completely heal. And throughout that period, one needed to just be understanding and appreciate what she had gone through. But I think in going through all of that, when you see your child begin to grow and you see her growing into something beautiful, you tend to forget all those pains and you tend to just appreciate God for what He has done and what He can always do. After the first one and the 18 months of healing and all that, we've gone ahead to have 2 others, and she had them through C-section. And that's why, I felt, having had the first one through C-section, why go through all that pain of natural birth when you can easily walk in, do what you need to do, get the baby out, and but It's been a wonderful experience. The other two have their own stories, but they're not as intense as the first. The first being our first experience. We came in as greenhorns, so we learned through the ropes. Nobody told us what to expect, so we found out by ourselves. So the other two experiences, because we knew what to expect, we knew what to do and what not to do, But so far so good. That's my story.